everybody? You can hear me okay? I can hear myself. So, as Anthony just said, I'm from HubSpot. I'm a senior growth marketing manager. I just hit my 3-year anniversary there, which is a big milestone considering that most people are at one company for less than a year. But one big thing that I'd like to mention is, yes, we have sales software, we have marketing software, we have CRM. We just launched our service hub. So now, from using a HubSpot platform, you not only market, sell to customers, but you can also service them in a human inbound way as well. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and take a look. Today, we'll be talking about this concept of topics over keywords and this new age of SEO that you might have heard about and you might be living in, and also how to approach your content strategy. But before we get into that, I want to tell you about what happened when I first moved to Dublin 6 weeks ago. I moved here from Boston, which is 4,800 kilometers, and I'm only adding that to show that I'm trying to learn how to speak in kilometers instead of miles. And for those of you who are familiar with Boston, you might notice that I don't have a Boston accent. I'm from California, so excuse my Californian accent, and if you can't understand me, just raise your hand. I don't repeat myself. But during my first day in Dublin, I had a lot to do. I came here with one suitcase and a backpack. So I needed to buy some more clothes, I needed to buy kitchenware, some food to cook, I needed to buy new furnishings for my apartment. And by the end of the day, I was tired. I didn't want to do anything else. The last thing I wanted to do was cook for myself. So I contacted a friend for food recommendations nearby. And my friend's name is Google. Now, Google doesn't care how many questions I ask, Google will always have an answer. And I can't say it's always a good answer, but something's better than nothing in this case. And as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to eat that night, the marketer in me kicked in, and I wondered, how did people find a place to eat 10 years ago when they moved to a new city? So of course, I had to figure it out. I did a search for restaurants in Dublin, and I changed the time frame to 2010. So if you didn't know, you can actually change the time frame that your search results show in at the top up there. And the thing that's interesting here, I'm not sure if you can read it, but the #1 search result for restaurants in Dublin is Lobster Pot Dublin Seafood Restaurant. So a restaurant actually ranked #1 for restaurants in Dublin. Clearly, whoever did this search in 2010 should have gotten a lobster dinner. But in 2018, our search is a little bit different. We might have done a search for restaurants near me. In fact, when you open up Google on your phone and you start typing in restaurants, it auto-completes to near me. And instead of getting a list of search results, you get this feature-rich box that has a map that tells you all the closest restaurants, the distance they are from you, ratings, pictures of the food, pictures of the restaurants, and so on. And I have to admit, I actually didn't type any of this into Google. I used my Google Pixel Assistant, and I searched for restaurants in Dublin. And then I got a list of restaurants next to me. So here we have Musashi IFSC, East Restaurant, J2 Grill, but of course I'm lazy, so I wanted the closest one. And it told me that Musashi was the closest place, so I ended up getting noodles and sushi for dinner. Despite that 4.5-star rating, I wouldn't recommend it, but that's a conversation for another time, and if any of you have food recommendations, I'm dying to hear them. So what happened there? I didn't type anything into Google, and I didn't get a list of links to click on. Well, with the improvements in technology, consumer search behavior has changed. And because of this change in behavior, search engines are changing as well to adapt to that expectation. So SEO has changed in the last 10 years. Any of you who are in SEO, Ian, looking at you, you are getting used to SEO and algorithm changes all the time. So this is nothing new. And this time around, improvements in mobile search and experience have raised the bar for consumer expectations. When consumers go to Google, they're not looking for a list of links to click on. They're looking for answers. So when I was getting hangry and I was looking for a place to eat, I went to Google and I didn't want a list of links to click and websites to research to find a best restaurant. I wanted to know the best restaurant that was close to me so I can go eat immediately. And these changes are due to a shift to more conversational search queries. Over the last couple of years, Google has fixed their algorithm to be more focused on these queries through natural language processing. So it's common for people to ask complex questions using full sentences and expect an answer because they understand that search engines understand them now. In 2016, 1 out of every 5 queries on Google's mobile app and Android devices were voice search. That was 2 years ago. Now, with the rising popularity of Google Assistant, Siri, Microsoft Cortana, Amazon Alexa, voice search is getting more popular. Who has used voice search in the last month? It's a good number of hands. And we're always getting bombarded with the new Amazon Alexa deals on Amazon, right? Now, there are 2 shifts in consumer behavior to break it down. There is how they search through conversation and mobile, and what they expect to get from search. So to recap, consumer search behavior has changed. That means search engines have adapted to meet their expectations. And of course, that means for marketers like us, we need to adapt, as usual. So let's start with the traditional process for creating content. This is gonna sound very familiar. First, you do keyword research. You wanna know what opportunities are out there and what you might potentially want to create content around. You choose a keyword that you wanna rank for. You write a blog post that's optimized for that keyword, and then you repeat the process for more keywords. And that last step is the concerning part, because it means that for every keyword you wanna rank for, you need to write 1 blog post. Now think about all the keywords you wanna rank for your business. It's a lot. So you're just focused on keyword after keyword after keyword, and that gets overwhelming. So that traditional approach to keyword optimization is not scalable, which begs the question, how do you optimize content for thousands of queries in a scalable way? And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. I've already given a spoiler alert early on, but before I go into the strategy, I have to share that this is something we've implemented across the entire HubSpot website. We've taught hundreds of customers how to do this strategy, and they're seeing phenomenal results that I'll share with you. And that's the topic cluster strategy. Before we get into what the strategy is, it helps to go through some terminology. This is what a topic cluster looks like when mapped out. You can see that there is pillar content that's represented by the orange circle in the center, and cluster content that's surrounding it. Now, you might know of pillar content by a different name. Rand Fishkin calls it 10x content. Brian Dean from Backlinko calls it skyscraper content. But simply put, pillar content is just long-form comprehensive content that covers a topic very broadly. Now, surrounding the pillar content are the cluster content, and those are shorter form pieces that dive deep into a subtopic of that pillar content. We'll go into an example, by the way. Those blue lines connecting them are hyperlinks. So each of these pages link to each other to create an internal linking network. So here's an example using workout routines. So the pillar content covers workout routines in general. It might talk briefly about different types of workout routines and why they're important to have, and maybe cite some examples. Now the cluster content will go deeper into these. You might have something focused on workout routines to get abs, workout routines to lose fat, workout routines to get without weights. And all these pieces of content are linked together to form this internal network. Now, a lot of this doesn't sound very new, and that's because it's very similar to what we used to do of creating content. The difference is when you start looking at site hierarchies and how your content is organized into your website. By show of hands, how many people here have thought about their site hierarchies? I actually expected fewer hands, but that's still not enough. So let's look at how most site hierarchies look. Using HubSpot as an example, we have here that HubSpot.com is the primary domain, and it's generally the strongest in terms of SEO. That's where most websites will link to when they refer to our business. And then from there, we link out to our subdomains for the blogs. So marketing, sales, services, and under each of those blogs, we have thousands of blog posts. We used to publish over 20 blog posts a day. And as you can imagine, that means our blog and site architecture got very bloated and unorganized. In fact, there were some cases where blog posts were outranking our product pages, and that was a really big concern. This is actually how the organic traffic looked like for our sales blog between 2016 and 2017. We hit a plateau, we stopped growing, and in fact, we honestly thought there wasn't much more room for growth. We kind of almost left it for dead and just figured, hey, we're okay with this. And before I show you how that changed, let's look at how site hierarchies should look. This is a relatively accurate representation of what the HubSpot site hierarchy looks like. So you can see that there are multiple pillar clusters, or multiple topic clusters, and each one has their own pillar content. And then each one has its group of cluster content as well. Now let's go into how this works. By rearranging the internal links into clusters, we signal to search engines that there's both breadth and depth within our website's content. That meant that search engines had an easier time crawling our website and understanding that there's a semantic relationship across our content, which meant that the pillar pages and the cluster content were viewed as having more authority and credibility than other pieces of content. So that meant SEO improved and we ranked better in the organic search results. Now, this is with the caveat that you're doing great content. It doesn't matter how beautiful your site architecture is if your content is crap. So what happens when you use this model? Here's an example of what happened when we improved our internal linking hierarchy for one small group of blog posts. We found that the more internal linking we did, the more organic impressions we got for these blog posts, which meant that the more internal linking, the better our rankings were. But that's highly abstract, so let's go into a more tangible example. Here's a blog post that we tested with. So in 2014, we published the post, and we optimized it for keywords. So we got some organic going, and then we saw a spike. That's from emailing it to our list. And then as we keep going, we see that organic continues to pick up, and we re-promoted it to new subscribers in 2015, so that's why we had that spike. In summer of 2015, we republished this. The only difference is that we added internal links to related content, and we created a pillar page and created a topic cluster around it. So now you can see that instead of dipping back down, the organic traffic began to grow at a new baseline. But that's fine and all. That's one blog post. You don't want to trust a sample size of n equals 1. So let's go onto a larger scale and look at something more recent. I showed you this earlier. That's our organic traffic for the sales blog. So when you shift it over and look at a wider time frame, you can see that we did grow by almost 200%. Now, I'd like for you to guess, whether it be in your head or just to your neighbor, when we implemented the topic cluster strategy to our sales blog. It was right there, July 2017. It was very recent. That's when Leslie, who was the sole editor of our sales blog, manually went through thousands of blog posts, reviewed them, and categorized them into their topics, and then manually went through them and added internal links to each blog post to create those clusters. That's literal blood, sweat, and tears. I remember leaving every night at 6 p.m. and she was still in the office working on this. So let's go into a quick recap before I explain how you can get started on this strategy. Before, you would focus on long-term or long-tail keywords. Now you would focus on topics instead of just looking at keywords. And it sounds very similar, but it's a shift in how you think about creating your content. It's no longer just one keyword per blog post, it's owning a topic across multiple posts. So by having this cluster of content, you end up ranking for far more keywords than you would have if you tried to do one-to-one. And back then, you would link to internal and external blog posts where it's relevant. So if you're writing a blog post about workouts and you end up writing about protein powders or something, I don't know if anyone here works out very much, but you link to another website that talks about protein powder because you're not writing about that. But here, while you'll still want to do that and provide those resources, you want to make sure you have a self-contained internal linking structure for your own website. And these next 2 points won't change very much, but they're important to include. On-page optimization still matters. You still want to optimize your header tags, your page title, your URL slug, and you still want to do external link building. This is still the #1 factor in showing search engines that you're a credible source. And I'm saying all of this because up until a couple years ago, you could have gotten by with those last 2 things. You could have just done the basics and optimized your blog post, sprinkle in some keywords, and get along to the next blog post. But now, with market saturation and more competitors understanding these tactics, you need to take more advanced measures that require more resources and effort to remain competitive in search. So how can you get started adapting this strategy? You won't be able to do all of this in one day, and if you can, then I highly commend you. First, you list the challenges that your product or services solves for. This is simply knowing your business. From there, define the topics that fall under each challenge. Each challenge might cover a bunch of different topics, and don't rule any topic out from having its own topic cluster, because that's an opportunity that you might realize a competitor hasn't taken advantage of yet. And then before you start thinking about creating any brand new content, run a content audit. Categorize your posts under those topics. You might find that you have 20 blog posts that cover one topic, but one blog post that covers another, and that topic might actually be very important to your business. Define your pillar content. So you have two options for this. You can create a brand new piece of content that's comprehensive, long form, or you can look at your existing content and turn that into a piece of pillar content. And then link your content to clusters. You'll have these different blog posts that cover the same topic. Link them all together and make sure there's a strong internal linking network between them. And I'll give you a comprehensive guide on how to do this at the end, by the way. So as you're doing all of this stuff, I want you to think about this graph, because yes, HubSpot is about 2,000 people now, but the person that was responsible for doing this was one person on a blog that decided to put in the time and effort to do it, because we didn't want to fall behind competitors. So we have Leslie to thank for growing that traffic by nearly 200%. With that being said, good luck. My emoji turned out differently than it did in my presentation, but you can get an in-depth guide to implement this strategy at davidleekim.com/topic clusters. Thank you.